Hey Joe, we have another question. This one's from Brian, and he's an engineer and he's having trouble trying to explain to people why engineering is more complicated than they think. Everybody's using AI tools now and they're vibe coding and they're thinking, oh, there's nothing to this, and but they're not remembering all the other disciplines of engineering and the security and what goes into making sure it's secure and then it's scalable and things like that. So how can he really think about how to talk to his teams about it and make them understand that they're more than just a cost center? What is an engineer with classic training really be able to bring to the table that others can't?
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending upon when you are chiming in. Welcome to Runtime Regrets. And Christine, I'm not sure if I heard that right. I don't know if it was Brian or Ryan who gave me that question. But so look, here's the problem that we are dealing with today as individuals in the enterprise architecture space that have spent most of our lives trying to figure out how to not just create systems, because for anybody who's been doing it for a few years, you can create a system that is capable of dealing with a user or two and getting stuff on the screen, getting it out the door. You can figure out, if you're a full stack developer, how to make an app, get it into the app. Like you figure these out. Making them secure, making them scalable, making them all of the things that make it enterprise grade software, or capable of dealing with a large volume of customers. If it were like an app, that's a completely different mindset than you get with these individuals that are utilizing some of the vibe coding platforms or whatever. Now at home, I'm a massive fan of Claude. It does a significantly better job, unfortunately, than I do if I structure the prompts correctly, and I still add my own architectural knowledge into what I'm building. But here's the risk. The risk is most of us who work for mid-sized to large-size corporations, the money is in the profit centers. IT is a cost center. So the money is always, and I shouldn't say the money, the funding is always coming from the line of business. So you really have to make sure that the individuals that have the capability to potentially use outside contractors, if they do, hopefully they have to have checks and balances with the inside resources in the IT space. But you really have to understand that once they start utilizing some of the vibe coding platforms that are in the marketplace, they're going to look at what you're producing and they're going to say, hey, I was able to create this app in a weekend, or I was able to create a couple of screens in a weekend, and it's it created the database behind the scene, and it can do all kinds of stuff. And suddenly they are massively enamored by what they were able to produce, and they are looking at all of us like, oh my God, why did it take you so long to develop some of this stuff? So answer one, hey, we didn't have the tools that you've got today that are capable of spitting out things that actually worked. We have had code snippets, the ability to have reusable libraries, things like inheritance and polymorphism and embedding different code bases within the structures that we've been creating for many decades, to allow us to get reuse, allow us to get velocity. But none of that is anything even remotely close to what we have in the AI space that we've got today. We've got agentic workflows that are capable of doing whole units. We have all of these different vibe coding platforms that are capable of doing, correct architectures at a small scale. And because they can see the results, it does two things. Number one, they're going to instantly start to question why these things were so complicated when we were doing them, because they don't really understand the complexity of the applications that they're creating. But number two, they're going to start to ask the question. They're going to start to ask the question very quickly, like, hey, why do we need the IT folks around when we can vibe code this stuff ourselves, or we can create all of these different things ourselves? And these questions are fair to ask. You have to understand these individuals are not coming from a place where they've had years and years of education, degrees, understand the importance of scalability, security, the threat landscape, all these different things. They're not thinking about all this stuff. So having said that, these questions are going to come up. The importance is being open, being able to use the tools yourself, and being able to educate folks on sorry, there's a homeless person here. I gotta give him food. I carry, no worries, man. Yeah, you too, brother. You too. So yeah, sorry about that. I carry food in my car for homeless people, actually nutritious food, because you know, it's cold up in these parts, and I feel horrible, but I also don't want to give you money. Anyway, I've completely gone off tangent. So I understand how frustrating it is now that you are getting questioned about how long it takes to do things, why things have to work the way that they have to work, the processes and controls that you've got in place, the structural engineering. It's going to increase. So I don't have a answer for you, because I'm dealing with this as well, and this is somewhat of a new thing where you've got individuals on the business side that are now using tools that are enabling them to write applications very, very quickly. What you need to do is you need to decompose what they're actually doing and explain to them why it's important for you still to have, and why it's mandatory, why you still need to have all of the structures in place to make sure that the code base and whatever it is that you're developing is capable of dealing with the threat landscape that's going on, that they're creating, that it has reusable components, and they're not going to understand these things. So unfortunately, you're going to have to do something that we've actually never really been successful at doing as IT folks, and that is sitting down with a business and trying to explain to them, hey, reusability is extremely important, because if we find a vulnerability, we need to be able to address it in one place, not 500 places. You have to explain to them that the vibe coding platforms that they might be utilizing or they might be playing with for the first time, every single time you ask it the same question, it might be generating a permutation of code, something that's a little bit different, a little bit off. Still works, still functions just fine, but that increases the threat landscape, the vulnerability landscape. They probably do not really have good understanding of how important testing is, and they're probably not baking that into their experience. And you really have to sit down and look at them and say, hey, it's great that you're able to create, and it's good that you're actually seeing what is possible, but there's a number of things that you need to understand that these tools do not address. Most of them do not effectively address scalability. Most of them do not effectively address reusability unless you actually say use these libraries, use these tools, use these methods, and nobody really does that, especially folks that are from the business side that are playing with these tools for the first time. Hopefully you've got checks and balances within your organization that prevent anybody from actually deploying anything, heaven forbid, because they would be opening up the company to multiple threats, multiple vulnerabilities that they don't even understand. So as you're getting more and more questions around, why does this take so long? I can see tools doing this very, very quickly. I've used these tools for the first time this weekend, and like I'm not understanding why it takes so long to deploy. You have to make sure that they understand that the things that these tools do, which is great, which is the enablement of a baseline application, the visualization that they're looking for, access the data, the repository. But the things that they don't do is they're not building in things like security, scale, testing. They're not doing it in most of the time, they're not doing it in a reusable way. So you're creating a very broad threat landscape, because the code is being written potentially in 5 or 6 different ways, and they're potentially increasing technical debt because of the volume of code that they can be created. So I wish I had a silver bullet bullet. But again, I think we all know that if we start having silver bullets in IT, none of us will be employed anymore, and I think some of us are worried about that already, because some of us do look at AI and its evolution in the next few years as that silver bullet. But for now, it's going to take time to get people to understand why you can't just have business folks vibe coding or creating applications and just launching them into production, and just because they can do something in a couple of days, that means that it's actually something that should be part of your environment as a corporation, given things like reusability, threat landscape, etc. So I hope that helps. If we need to talk more about this, I'm happy to have a discussion around specifically like what that discussion would look like. How do you explain threat landscapes to folks? How to explain the importance of reusability, how to show the differences between what gets generated with one prompt and how something can look almost the exact same with another prompt, but actually gets generated under the hood a little bit differently, which increases the threat landscape. If you've got more follow-up questions, Brian, please feel free to reach out. Happy to continue this discussion. I think this is going to be a topic that is going to increase as more and more individuals that don't come from a technical background start to play with these tools that make technology look really, really simple when there's still a lot of complications going on with what we do on a daily basis. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for the question, Brian. I'm still amazed that people are finding me so early, but I guess that means I've opened up a Pandora's box. So thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Christine. Appreciate your help pulling all this stuff together for me. Take care, everyone. Bye.